This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Lee Rosen and Ned Days cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Here's Lee Rosen.
It's good to be with you today from Shanghai, China. We have been here for a week now, staying in a hotel where nearly no one speaks English, but the kindness that we have experienced here, it transcends language. Everyone that we meet is so genuinely helpful, and they try so hard to understand us. We often find ourselves wanting to apologize for not knowing Chinese, feeling that we should be making much more of an effort to speak the language. Of course, our apology is usually lost in translation, but none of that really matters. What we do understand loud and clear is that we are welcome. Their smiles, their patience, their willingness to meet our needs, it all tells us that they're glad that we're here, and it's a warmth that needs no words.
It's time for your tech tip. I know I sound like a broken record when it comes to AI and workflow automation tools, but I still see so many attorneys leaving hours and hours of productive employee time on the table by not taking advantage of even the basic options we've had for years. The first time I set up something with Zapier about a decade ago now, I couldn't believe it. It really was magical. We took a few tasks where an employee was having to copy data manually back and forth for several clients each day and turned them into something that happened without any human intervention. Just those few automations opened up half of the hours we had for that full-time employee each week, and we were able to put her to work at more valuable tasks. AI is having the same effect, and as you might expect, the two together mean even true solos can offload operations and provide services that just wouldn't have been possible a few years ago. I've been keeping an eye on a platform called Lindy.ai for a while now, and they have just introduced a new feature that I think will be a game changer for a lot of practices. We will get to that in just a minute, but I want to explain Lindy's core functionality first. If you've used Zapier or Make.com or any of the popular workflow automation solutions, you will have a rough idea of how this works. You generally start with a trigger event. That might be a field update in your CRM, an email received, a calendar event created, and then every time that triggering event occurs, you run a set of actions with the information from that trigger in one or more other applications. For example, a client books a call using your Calendly link, and that information is used to send you a notification in Teams and create a draft invoice in QuickBooks Online, all automatically. Now, I've been suggesting for a while that one of the big benefits we get from incorporating LLM functionality like ChatGPT into these workflows is that instead of having to hard code every filter and path and decision tree, you start to let AI categorize inputs and make the call. If a client needs to receive one of 4 possible emails based on an event in your practice management system, instead of inflexible decision-making where you make that decision based on a keyword or a particular field value, you can pass all of the data and a prompt about the result you want and let a tool like ChatGPT make the decision based on the criteria you set. That's certainly useful, but Lindy incorporates this functionality on a more fundamental level. Instead of you having to choose and connect a fixed piece of data that needs to be passed from the trigger to the following steps, you can just give Lindy plain text instructions on what you want and let it make the call. Instead of a static email template with a few merge fields, you can provide a prompt and the kind of email you want based on the information in your workflow, and it will then generate a new, unique email based on the context each time it runs. And this is all incorporated into every step. You don't need to pass data to a separate ChatGPT step and then parse that back into your workflow. As you would expect from one of these workflow tools that lets you connect and automate your applications, Lindy includes most of the integrations you would want out of the box: Google Workspace, Microsoft 365, Airtable, Notion, Stripe, Salesforce, HubSpot, and a lot more. And Lindy also includes its own AI meeting assistant. If you are familiar with a service like Fireflies or Otter that sits in on your calls and provides you with a transcript and summary after the fact, that's what this does, but it's built into your workflow automation tool, so you can trigger it or trigger things from it in ways that you just can't with other tools that integrate with third-party meeting assistants. Another great addition is that these workflows can be deployed as chatbots on your website, either for internal use by the firm or as external tools for clients and potential clients. You can provide documents and resources in a dedicated knowledge base for your bot, or connect it to your online office suite, Notion, or Airtable, so that it can refer to things like employee manuals, HR materials, training guides, website articles, or just about anything else you want for its interactions. Now, while the chatbot tool is interesting, I have found the utility of live chat functionality to be limited on lawyer websites. It really depends a lot on the market and the practice area. But Lindy has just rolled out a phone call functionality as well. Instead of a live chat box on your website, you can connect it to a phone number you own and have real-time voice calls with the chatbot that you have prompted to play whatever role you want: intake booking, information, data collection, whatever. There's a phone number on the Lindy.ai site that you can call to try it out. Unsurprisingly, it is set up as a salesperson trying to get you to sign up for an account, but it was incredibly responsive and surprisingly good on its feet when I talked to it. Yes, you can tell it's not a human. No, this might not be able to replace your receptionist right now, but in a year, I wouldn't be so sure. All of this functionality does come at a cost. There is a free tier to play around with and get your feet wet. The paid options start at about $50 per month, which is in line with other services. That phone call voice agent functionality starts at $300 per month, which, frankly, if it's viable for your use case, is kind of a steal when you think about it. Again, you can tell it's not human, but it is shockingly good. And as the tech improves and we become more used to interacting with computers in this way, this may very well be the way we handle a lot of our interactions going forward. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip.
And now for your moment of concise advice. My first time in Cairo, it was absolutely unforgettable. I traveled there with Ned. He is a colleague that I have worked with for many years, and we found ourselves staying in an old Airbnb that was surrounded by the police that were there to protect the synagogue that was located next door. Armed officers with machine guns. They were part of our everyday view. Every time we came or went, we had to pass those guys with those big guns. And it was intense. And I'll tell you, Cairo, it's an intense place. It's overwhelming. It's a city of over 20 million people. It's buzzing with noise and energy and unpredictability. And it felt a lot like stepping into a different world where nothing was familiar or predictable. And then, as the week went by, along came Friday at lunchtime, and there was this huge crowd forming in the street just down the block from our apartment. And this was not long after the revolution in Tahrir Square, so naturally, we felt a bit of a spike of anxiety as this crowd got larger and larger. But as we stood there watching, what became clear is that this crowd, this was not a protest or unrest. It was Friday prayers. People were gathered there in peace, and what had initially felt intimidating, it turned into a scene of calm, prayerful unity. It was a reminder that sometimes what seems unfamiliar and threatening, it's actually an invitation to see the world, to see things differently. And when I returned to Raleigh, to my law firm, I noticed that as a result of my experience in Cairo, something had shifted. My assumptions had shaken loose. I looked at familiar routines with fresh eyes. I was seeing the world a little bit differently, and it struck me that things that had felt stuck or inevitable in my business, they weren't that way anymore. I found myself more open to change and less afraid of the discomfort that comes from trying new things, new ideas, new ways of approaching business. The Cairo experience, it taught me that stepping out of your comfort zone, whether that means traveling to an unfamiliar place or rethinking the way you run your business, it isn't just about dealing with discomfort. No, it's about transformation. It's about embracing change. It's about finding value in what it is that feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable. It's so easy to keep things the same, to stick to the routines that make us feel safe, that keep us feeling comfortable. But real growth, it comes when we allow ourselves to be a little uncomfortable. If you're feeling stuck in your business, whether it's with your client load or your fees or the way you manage your team, it might be time to shake things up, to step over into that zone of discomfort. Staying comfortable, it's so easy, but change, That's where the value lies. That's where the progress comes from. That's where you move forward. When I came back to my law firm after Cairo, I realized that change, it isn't something to be afraid of. No, it's something that can breathe new life into our work, into our businesses. And just like those Friday prayers, what seems intimidating at first, it might turn into something peaceful and transformative and deeply rewarding. So here's what I suggest. Today, take just a few minutes and identify one area of your practice that feels too comfortable. Is it a process that you've always done the same way? Or is it a conversation that you've been avoiding? Maybe it's about accountability or delegating, or maybe it's about a change in your fees or your rates. What is the one thing that feels stuck, that feels too comfortable? And choose that one thing, no matter how small, and take a step toward changing it this week. Embrace the discomfort. Start the process of change. That's where the growth starts, and that's your moment of concise advice. Wrapping up from Shanghai, thanks for spending a few minutes with me and Ned today. We hope you have a great weekend and an even better week next week. Keep plugging away, moving forward, and getting things done. You're on the right track. You'll get there, I promise. We're all in this together, and together we build better practices through better marketing, better management, and better technology. Until next time, I'm Lee Rosen.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of lawyers focused on working on, instead of in, their practices. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your firm. Sign up for free at roseninstitute.com.